because for us it's not about hectares, it's about the integrity of the organization and the ecosystems. We require traceability. We do not let companies use logo regardless. They have to demonstrate that indeed they have sourced products from a sustainable source. And we do a chain of custody, very thorough overview, so that we can see that biodiversity is, integrity is maintained through the supply chain as well. That's essentially it. Just a few challenges. Mainstreaming training and certification at low cost, we are considered relatively to be expensive. And we have no regrets there. We have still gained the market share despite doing that. The issue is also of the smallholders. For example, how do you keep the smallholders invested in sustainability? Why would a smallholders make investment? It's not easy, and there is an effort that has to be made there as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, while the next speaker comes up, just to remind you, some of you have just come in. These are quick presentations, so this listening card is a way for you to take notes on what you see are some of the strengths of these approaches and areas of further improvement that you can identify from your perspective. These are just kind of 5-minute bursts, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions, dig deeper into some of the things you saw and were interested in during the discussion part. Okay, so our next speaker is Holly Dublin. She's going to be speaking up. Nope, I'm going to stop right there. It's your time is up because this is.
I'm known to be a very fast speaker, but I have to tell you, I haven't been doing ignites.
Okay.
So when you're ready, you click on this.
From PPR and Puma's environmental profit loss.
Okay, so to begin with, just to say that largely the exercise that I'm going to tell you about has to do with the feeling of a need of starting something new in a big corporation, and the need for a baseline before one would be able to prioritize what actions we take. So just for those of you that aren't familiar with PPR is an ensemble. It's a corporation that holds many luxury and sport and lifestyle brands such as Gucci, Bottega Veneta, Yves Saint Laurent, Stella McCartney, and others. So about a year ago, we officially launched what we call PPR Home. PPR Home was a way for this corporation to begin moving forward from something they very deeply believed in, which was about sustainability and moving beyond corporate social responsibility. But the company was going through also a kind of a learning curve at the same time, partly because I came in there and it's like a bomb hitting probably, but understanding a lot more about the dependence of these companies on ecosystem services and biodiversity, not the least of which is because companies like that have very, very deep dependencies on raw material sourcing. And these raw materials, whether it's cotton, whether it's leather, whether it's python skins, whether it's gold, we need to know a lot more about when we're sourcing and what the effects are. Of course, people within the company had general ideas about what happens. We have land conversion that has to lead to livestock and fiber growing. But how close was it to the company? It's one thing to read it in the Herald Tribune. It's another thing to think about it inside your company. Of course, the impacts of processing, manufacturing, these things all are there, sitting somewhere in the psyche. But outside of really reporting on CO2 emissions, what did the company really understand about other impacts on biodiversity and ecosystem services? So it became a way of thinking, which was, we really can't manage what we haven't measured. And it was pretty clear that although there was excellent environmental reporting, PPR is a GRI A+ candidate, so we know about environmental reporting, but we hadn't gone deeper. So one of our companies decided to pioneer, and particularly the CEO at that time of that company, Jochen Zeitz, who's currently our CSO in PPR, he decided and conceived this idea around environmental profit and loss. And so we took a time to do that with Puma. So it's about the entire supply chain, and this was very, very critical, because there was a time probably when the companies were thinking more just of their operations level. You could have a carbon neutral headquarters. This was such a different thing. So we started really drilling down into Puma and really looking very deeply at Puma's entire supply chain, from the design of the product all the way through its life. And that meant measuring, finding data, modeling the gaps in data. But the really unique thing about our environmental profit and loss account is that it monetized. And the monetizing bit was very, very critical for PPR, because it was speaking to CEOs and CFOs who really were not so interested in biodiversity, I can assure you. So this is what came out of Puma's first EP&L 2010. And we learned some lessons here, some really interesting things, particularly the CEO learned some interesting things because he declared this was going to happen before he knew a single thing about the results. And importantly, this shows that it gave us a tremendous ability to know both across the types of impacts and where it was hitting in our supply chain, which allows you to start drilling into where you have to do those reductions, where you have to take the actions. And you'll see that it happens, at the levels they thought it was happening was not where it was at. But more importantly, now starting to set real targets, targets that have to be delivered on by CEOs, targets that are linked to their performance bonuses, targets that are linked to making a company change its behavior. So we've seen it actually in a very positive way, and we've been taking this opportunity to look at what can we do that works with nature rather than against nature. And we've found a surprising number of opportunities in that probably were just never looked into before. And this is how, within Puma, we've really started to look at, okay, what can we do in terms of internalizing the actions that we learned from our own profit and loss statement? Well, we can look at sourcing strategies, process efficiencies, and just the design of a product. So the EP&L is an evolving tool, and that's really important for me to say. And we're now going into a phase of having an external expert review because we want to move it forward, and that's our general plan, is to improve it, to move it forward, to have partnerships that help us to do this. So we're getting prepared for that. We're going outside of our own companies, even though 16 of our brands will be doing EP&Ls. We're now working with other brands, with governments, to move this into a global standard. We have a tremendous amount of energy growing around us. We're almost overwhelmed, to be honest, but we like that. We like being overwhelmed. So this is what drives us, that we know, once we know and we're aware, we're responsible for our action and our inaction. We can do something about it or ignore it. Either way, we're responsible, and that's our belief. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was our third Ignite. Our fourth Ignite is looking at a sector-driven program, and it's going to be Matthias Lessinger from Kuoni.
Kuoni is a global travel company based in Switzerland. It's more than 100 years old. We have 15,000 employees and are active in 60 countries, operating in several hundred offices. So, looking at the consumer demand is certainly one of the major drivers behind more sustainability in our industry. We probably lag behind our industry, but according to a study from Swiss Bank, the sustainable specialist operators experienced growth of 11% last year. But we also have to face that consumers are not actively asking for sustainable travel products. They expect good quality, fair prices, a good experience at a fair price. But they also expect from us fulfilling sustainability standards in the value chain, such as fair labor conditions, child labor, preventing discrimination, respecting the global human rights, mainly protecting children from being sexual exploitation. They expect from us a shared fair between local communities and the industry, respecting local culture, religion. They also want from us to see that we try to source locally so that we can increase the economic benefit at the destination. And last but not least, they also expect from us protecting the environment in the ecosystem, such as coral reefs, the rainforests, and so on. So basically, we as a tourism company, we have to protect the product we are selling. It is the so-called often cited branch we are sitting on. So the main challenge for us, how can we ensure that our 85 suppliers we directly contract are ensuring basically our conditions in terms of sustainability? How can we assure that they are mitigating the negative impacts they have? So we have a three-step approach in managing the supply chain. We engage suppliers, we do monitor and improve sustainability performance, and we also want to communicate and sell the sustainable travel products. This is outlined in our supplier code of conduct, which is a binding document for all our suppliers, looking at compliance with applicable laws, sexual exploitation of children, human and labor rights, environment, benefiting local communities, and also the monitoring and enforcement. So the key challenge is monitoring. How can we ensure that our hotel partners are complying with those standards all over the world? So this is also a major challenge for the other tour operators. It is a challenge for the tourists, Thomas Cooks, Virgins all over the world. Together we are generating more than 50 million passengers annually. So we have a huge leverage if we talk to our suppliers. And interestingly, we are often contracting the same suppliers at the same location. So we have products we are selling together. So similar to health and safety, we have a common interest that we have an efficient monitoring of our sustainability issues in the value chain. So that's why the industry came up with Travel Life. Travel Life is a system that has been developed by the Federation of Tour Operators in the UK together with the really large tour operating businesses to monitor the mainstream hotels. So this checklist has been developed by the industry, mainly by the industry, driven by the industry in a multi-stakeholder dialogue. It is a questionnaire that is focusing on the product itself, so we're not monitoring the process, we're monitoring the product, a hotel. A certified auditor goes out and checks the hotels according to the checklist, looking at all the standards we are asking them. This is fed in a common shared database. We have a credit system, we share information amongst so-called competitors, and currently we are moving forward from a second to a third-party audit. The major triggers for hotels to be part of this in the first step is costs. So by being more efficient, we save a lot of costs. Usually we see that in the hotels, the knowledge about sustainability is not that big, except from probably larger hotel brands. So that's why we also invest a lot in supporting and training of staff in hotels. We want to show them how to improve sustainability performance. So it's a stick and carrot approach. The carrot is obviously an award, because we see that hotels that have a higher sustainability credentials usually also have higher customer satisfaction rates, higher retention rates. So sustainability and quality are directly linked. We also try then to sell those sustainability products. We have seen at the beginning that consumers are looking or asking for sustainable travel products. So by offering them Travel Life certified hotels, we feel that we can answer the customer questions. So Travel Life for us is a system that is efficient, it's cost efficient, we can integrate it easily in our supply chain, we share information, and it's an excellent tool for managing both risks and opportunities in the value chain. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so our fifth Ignite coming up is Dana Lehman. She's from the IUCN SSC Medicinal Plant Specialist Group, and she's going to be talking to us about a national regulatory system called the Fair Wild Standard.
Okay.
The Medicinal Plant Specialist Group has been involved in the development of the Fair Wild Standard on behalf of IUCN, working together with Traffic, the World Wildlife Fund, industry partners. This standard is being incorporated into a regulatory system for medicinal and aromatic plant wild collection in Lebanon in a project funded by UNDP. One of the primary species involved in this project is Lebanese oregano, which is a basic ingredient of za'atar, which is the herbal mix you eat with Lebanese bread. Everybody in Lebanon eats it. Lebanese oregano grows on rocky hillsides in Lebanon. The diminishing quality and increasing competition for the collection sites are indicators that the resource is under pressure. The traditional harvest is that someone from the family goes out into the hills and collects enough for the family to make za'atar. This market demands quality. The market, though, is increasingly commercial, urban, export. Bands of hired collectors come into the hills and they mow it, or they uproot all the plants, And this market really is demanding quantity, not quality. So it's a challenging situation for the country of Lebanon to, to manage this resource. But the situation in Lebanon is representative of the situation for medicinal and aromatic plants around the world. There are many species that require this kind of attention, complex social and economic scenarios. So we've created the Fair Wild Standard in a competitive environment of standards with different overlapping claims and very similar kinds of principles. The unique elements of the Fair Wild Standard are, first, that we've designed it to apply to wild collection. It's not adapted from, say, an organic standard. It is designed for wild collectors. The second unique element is that we've designed it to apply to different kinds of implementation scenarios, not just certification, as you will see in Lebanon in a regulatory system. The standard itself does cover social and economic principles as well as ecological principles, but where we feel we really have brought something new and deep is the ecological application. So underlying the ecological application of the standard are several concepts. One is the concept of risk. Not all medicinal and aromatic plants are the same. They have intrinsic characteristics that make them at different risk. The second concept is adaptive management, so that the standard doesn't assume that everybody's doing the right thing now. What we try to do is push people toward understanding better what is sustainable. The third concept is appropriate rigor. If you have a low risk scenario with a plant, wild collected scenario, you can apply relatively simple tools that are very practical and cost effective. But a high-risk species and a high-risk situation requires more sophisticated tools, more rigorous management, more rigorous monitoring, and we've designed the standard to apply to this range of situations. So going back to Lebanon, these concepts are being built into the regulatory system for medicinal and aromatic plant collection throughout the country. It's also being built into a new national certification scheme called Cedar Excellence, which is now being applied to sustainable collection of Lebanese oregano marketed in, you can find this marketed in Beirut. So to summarize a couple of the challenges for this for the Fair Wild Standard. These resources are important to health, to livelihoods, to food. And we must find a way to make wild collection sustainable for these species. But nobody said this was going to be an easy thing to do. The standard is young, we're learning as we go along, and we're finding that when we apply ourselves, we really can do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great. Okay. So our sixth Ignite is coming from Syngenta. It's Juan Gonzalez Valero, who's going to be talking about a product stewardship approach.
All right. Syngenta is probably the biggest input supplier for agriculture. And the stewardship approach that I'm going to show is actually looking to steward the product, as the name already said. So the supply chain approach is probably not going to be reflected as with the others, but the farmer is at the beginning of many of the supply chain. We all know that farming, so using the land for farming purposes, is one of the major threats to habitat loss, to wilderness loss out there. Most of the species are not lost because of any poisons or whatever. They're lost because of the loss of habitats. So if we want to actually do something about biodiversity, improvements around biodiversity, we have to do something about habitats. But agricultural landscapes and biodiversity in this landscape doesn't come on its own. You have to be actively managing it in order to actually get to a result that works for the farm in the farmland. Why? Because farmlands, essentially agricultural landscapes, are managed landscapes for many, many, many generations already. So they have been transformed from wilderness into cultural habitats that have to be managed in one way or another. The question is, do you manage them to produce food, so maximize the food that you can get out of the land, or do you manage them to actually cultivate something else, cultivate biodiversity? I'm faster than my slides. So, and that's the alternative that you have in this landscapes. This kind of biodiversity will not happen on its own if you just leave it to regenerate on its own. So the question that we asked ourselves when developing the approach, is it an or can we do it an and? Can we actually transform the way of managing that farm to actually become inclusive and add value to both sides? The first question you have to ask, what adds more value to the biodiversity that you're looking for around the farm? You can actually just let natural regeneration happen, but natural regeneration will not do the trick in landscapes that have been actually grown with annual crops for many, many years.